Welcome back to the Pipey Pastor. Sharp Things Saturday. Well, I mentioned that, and of course, I'm smoking the same pipe in the same video. So, still smoking the tomato, still smoking the brown Irish twist. But I mentioned that I had another sharp thing with a long story, both in terms of my own personal connection to it and in terms of historical connection. So that thing is this guy right here. Camera's not far away to get the whole thing in, maybe like that. There we go. This is a bayonet. And you can see triangle shaped blade. And as you can see, it's in marvelous condition. And you're going to be even more impressed with the condition probably when I get into the whole age story thing. But one thing I do want to point out before I get into that, when it comes to antique weapons, or antiques in general, don't do restorations on them unless you have an expert do them. In many cases, restorations take away from the value. Now, I have no intention of ever selling this, so it doesn't make a difference. But when I first bought this entire case was black. You couldn't see any of this brass at all. And then I had it polished to get it back. It was like in parade condition. It was beautiful. But then I found out that, hey, taking all that patina off and the polishing was a bad thing in terms of valuation. So since then, I've just been letting it gain patina again. And I bought this 36 years ago. So in 36 years, that's all the darker that brass has gotten. So lesson learned. But I found that guy in an antique store, I said about 36 years ago. I was just browsing around the store with my mom, and she was looking at, I don't know, whatever, but I was always drawn to like the antique knives and things like that because I was a kid, And I saw that. And at the time, it was so old and so crusty with age, like you couldn't even pull the blade out. And the lady who owned the antique store was like an old house with a bunch of old stuff in there. She thought that it was something from like the Civil War. She wasn't sure. It came off like a Civil War rifle, or maybe a World War I rifle, but she wasn't sure, and she couldn't get the blade out. And she thought that the tab on the top was like a lever you push down, and you don't. It just slides in and out. So she sold it to me for $12. Well, I spent the next several years trying to research where this thing came from, where it was, what rifle it was associated with. And this is back before the internet. So I took it to some gun stores. And I was like, have you ever seen anything like this? Do you know where this came from? And the general consensus was that it was a World War II rifle. In particular, they thought that it was a rifle from the first part of World War II when they had used a different model of rifle, and then they'd upgraded and changed by the end of the war. But that this was one of the holdovers from that first round. So for years, I thought, okay, well, that's what it is. It's an early World War II bayonet. Okay, and I just kept it and didn't even think about it. Well, fast forward about almost 30 years. My family and I were living in Scotland at the time, and we're taking a tour through the Highlands, and we're looking through Castle Argham, I think. It was the family seat of Clan Donald, which was one of the clans that engaged in the Jacobite Rebellion. You can Wikipedia that. I won't do the history lesson on that one. In any case, the main hall of this house was festooned with weapons, all kinds. It had, family swords and daggers and dirks and shields and so on and so forth, and claymores and everything else, but a huge array of firearms, a massive, massive display of firearms. because it was not all the firearms, but many of the firearms that the family had used to arm their people when they were engaging in the rebellion, and so on and so forth, right? So we're walking around, I'm getting a kick out of this, seeing all these really old, flintlocks and so on and so forth, decorating the walls. And we go upstairs, we go around a corner into the hall leading into the clan chief's bedroom area, and there's a case on the side of the wall leading into the bedroom, and I see this. As you can see, that's my bayonet. That's the exact same model. So I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? So I grabbed one of the attendants, and I'm like, can you tell me anything about this rifle and this bayonet? And she says, well, actually, yeah, that's one of the few rifles that I know something about, because this rifle is in a painting. And she points me to the painting across the hall, and it's the clan chief standing there with that rifle, with that bayonet on it. Not the one that I'm holding, obviously, that was, was his own. But he carried that rifle during the Jacobite rebellion in 1746. That model of rifle was designed in Scotland, and it was so expensive that it couldn't be owned or operated really by anybody but the nobility. So that rifle was carried by a lot of the rich clan chiefs and the nobility in Scotland at the time during the Jacobite rebellion. So here I have this bayonet that was produced in 1745, 1746 in Scotland, and I find it in an antique store in Brownsburg, Indiana, 150 years later, or however long ago it was. I'm not going to do the math in my head, but and I had this thing for over 30 years before realizing its true prominence. So again, so it's a neat thing to have. It's to say it's a long story for me. I've had it since I was a kid, and it's traveled, obviously back and forth across the ocean twice. Initially from Scotland to the U.S. for whoever brought it over, some Scottish noble person or what have you, or it came over with one of the families or something. It ended up floating around and finding its way to an antique store, and then I take it back with me when I move to Scotland, and then back over to the U.S. So that thing's traversed the ocean a few times. But another neat thing about it is that model of bayonet was outlawed not too long after that production. I think that model of bayonet was kept in production for nearly 100 years because it was incredibly effective because of the triangle-shaped blade. The triangle-shaped blade prevents the wound from being able to be sewn shut. If you get stabbed with that bayonet, you will bleed to death. There's no way to stop the wound. So they said that was a cruel and unusual weapon to use in combat, so they outlawed it. They kept it for 90 years, and then they're like, okay, well, you know what? This is not cool. So they outlawed it. But it's not illegal to own. Obviously, it's an antique. It's let's say 170, 80 years old, something else like that. But it's a neat, sharp thing to have. So that is my Sharp Thing Saturday for this week. I have another really cool one next week that was given to me as a gift. And then I have my daily carry as well, which I think is really important for a couple of reasons. So I might do my daily carry or the other one. I'm not sure yet. But one way or another, I'll get it out there. I will be traveling again. I'm back on the road, this time to North Carolina. And I'll be there for about a week. So I don't know if I'll get my Sharp Thing video out again. And we're doing college visits as well, right? This weekend and next weekend for my oldest. So we'll be doing a lot of traveling with that as well. So I hope to get it out. We'll see what happens. But one way or another, my daily carry or the other really cool knife that's actually from another country as well. So, but we'll get that next week. So in the meantime, I'm going to turn back to my tobacco I have to relight now. Hope you have a lovely week. As always, happy reading.